Welcome back to History on a Hog. I'm Captain Boz. In Part 2, we left Coronado and his expedition in New Mexico in July of 1540 at the native Zuni pueblo they called Cibolo. He was hoping that this village was one of the fabled 7 cities of gold, or El Dorado. But after entering the city in the Spanish way and ransacking the entire village looking for gold, he found nothing. And so, he decided to keep looking. In his frustration, Coronado would send out 2 scouting parties to reconnoiter the region. One went towards the northwest, and the other towards the east-northeast. The northwest scouting party, led by Garcia Lopez de Cartagenas, would eventually encounter a vast canyon area, and he and his party would become the first Europeans to lay eyes on the Grand Canyon. The other party found more Pueblo settlements in the Rio Grande Valley, between modern-day Albuquerque and Santa Fe, New Mexico. In the fall of 1540, Coronado moved their base of operations to this area, what he called Tigüey. In the Tigüey area, they began to encounter and skirmish with a particularly fierce local Native American tribe, who were probably Apache. These skirmishes continued for several months before it ended. With the locals subdued, the expedition settled in for the winter at Tigüey. Still disappointed that he hadn't found any treasure up to this point, Coronado's hope was restored in early 1541 when he had heard stories of a new land filled with gold and riches beyond belief. One of the native slaves captured in the previous year's Tigüey campaign told Coronado of a new land towards the northeast. From this Indian, whom the Spanish called the Turk, a name given to him because he wore a Native American headdress similar to the turbans of the Turkish people, Coronado heard stories from him of a wealthy civilization called Quivira, far to the east-northeast. Of course, stories like this just fueled his ambition to seek out and claim the wealth for himself. So a plan was hatched to venture off towards the northeast and find this El Dorado, or City of Gold.
In April of 1541, Coronado broke camp and led his army, the Catholic friars, and the native allies out from Santa Fe and headed east towards present-day northwest Texas and began his search for Quivira. Historians believe, with the Turk guiding him, Coronado and his army may have crossed into today's Texas Panhandle, probably passing through the present-day West Texas communities of Hereford and Canadian.
And it would be there where Coronado and his expedition would encounter vast herds of bison, or the American buffalo, the first Europeans to ever set eyes on them. Coronado would later write, quote, "I found such quantity of cows that it is impossible to number them, for while I was journeying through these plains, there was not a day that I lost sight of them." End quote. The Spanish were awed by the size and vastness of the West Texan prairie. Quote, "The country the buffalo traveled over was so smooth that if one looked at them, the sky could not be seen between their legs." End quote. Men and horses became lost in the featureless plain, and Coronado felt like he had been swallowed up by the sea. In this place, in what we now call West Texas, Coronado found a large settlement of people he called Quecheros. Again, they were probably a large settlement of Apaches. In his expedition report, Coronado mentioned that one settlement alone contained over 200 teepees, which implies a population of more than 1,000 people living together for at least part of the year, at least according to some experts. The Quicheros were not awed or impressed by the Spanish, nor by their weapons, and certainly not by their big dogs. Today, we call these big dogs horses. Remember, up to this point, native North Americans had never seen a horse. Quote, "They did nothing unusual when they saw our army, except to come out of their tents to look at us, after which they came to talk to the advance guard and ask who we were." End quote. Coronado described the Quicheros as nomads, following the buffalo herds on the plains. The Spanish smartly negotiated an entrance into the settlement. If they had come into the village in the Spanish way, I believe they would have all been wiped out by the fierce Apaches, and that would have been the end of his expedition. After a short time, Coronado left the Quicheros behind and continued east-northeast in the direction in which the Turk told him that Quivira was located. As Coronado and his army descended into West Texas Canyon country, they encountered another large Native American tribe, the Tejas. While among the Tejas, one tribal leader told Coronado that he was going in the wrong direction, saying Quivira lay to the north. By this time, Coronado seems to have lost confidence that any fortune lay ahead of him. After having spent over a year searching for treasure, with no success, he had become progressively frustrated, and he decided that his expedition was too large to be wandering all over the plains. So he made a monumental decision. He decided to divide the expedition into two parts and sent most of his men and supplies back the way he came, towards New Mexico. Coronado took the rest of the expedition, which consisted of only 40 Spanish soldiers, some Native American slaves, his servants, and a bunch of priests and monks, including Father Padilla, forward in search of the elusive Quivira. By doing this, Coronado philosophically changed his mission, changed it from a mission of conquest to a mission of reconnaissance. After more than 30 days of trekking through what is now northwest Texas and Oklahoma, the Coronado reconnaissance expedition crossed into what is now southwestern Kansas, near the town of Liberal, Kansas. And this is where I picked up on his trail and began following it northward. I started my ride here in Liberal, Kansas, at the site where the Kansas Historical Society placed a marker and statue of Coronado. It is here that modern historians agree that the Coronado expedition crossed into modern-day Kansas and onto the Great Plains. So, from this location, Coronado set out with the smaller expedition northeastward, towards today's Dodge City. Still following the Turks' lead, they probably followed either a well-traveled buffalo herd trail or an established Indian trail in this direction, until they stumbled onto a swiftly moving river larger than any he had seen before in this area. Today we know this river as the Arkansas River.
I'm standing at Coronado Cross Park just outside of Dodge City, Kansas, which is just over my right shoulder. In front of me and behind the camera is the Arkansas River. On June 29, 1541, after much hardship, the Coronado expedition crossed the Arkansas River at this location, near the present-day Fort Dodge. Coronado's senior Catholic priest on the expedition, a Friar Juan Padilla, held a massive Thanksgiving on the nearby hills, the first Christian service recorded in the interior of North America. As you can see, the state of Kansas has erected a Catholic cross marker commemorating the river crossing and the Mass that was held here.
We'll continue to follow Coronado's trail when you return for Part 4 of A Conquistador in Kansas. We'll find out why Coronado continues to the north, what's driving him, and what happens when he finally encounters the Quivirans. Find out next time on History on a Hog. If you've been enjoying this series, please do me a favor and click like or subscribe and keep up with new episodes. And please, share this YouTube site with your friends. Thanks for watching.